In the meantime, we all know that the economic recovery ultimately will depend upon the strength of small business. And so we're going to go to a small business now in Jasper, Indiana, and Senator Mike Braun, the Republican senator from Indiana. Senator, thank you for joining us. I understand you have some association with the small business from which you come.
So I'm sitting in my wife's store that was started back in 1978, and I've been back 10 days from D.C. and have talked to so many business owners, small, medium, and large, but this was one of them that would have been considered a non-essential business. And the report I'm getting almost across the board is especially in that category, and many of the essential businesses. David, talked to a casting company that does a lot of business with the automotive industry. March, basically only off 10%, 80% off in April, to where they now, with 7 or 8 plants, have to look at which ones they're going to close, how many workers are going to lay off, because they're large enough to where they've just got access to the general liquidity we put in the system. So I think the focus has been, we've all been watching the disease, and I think we're actually benefiting from how we did incorporate the social distancing, the hygiene, do not get together in large groups. But the chorus I'm hearing in Indiana, which is, we are the cross-section of the country, the crossroads of it, is the real solutions, not more government. Let's be smart about selectively reopening the economy, protecting the vulnerable populations of elderly, defend them well, and the healthcare workers that have to still fight it. Indiana's an interesting place where across the state, we're rural. Indianapolis, though, has been cited as a place to watch, but we've been lucky. So far, it's been under control. But in general, what we do in terms of the Phase 4, I'm going to be willing to add more to the SBA package, because I think we've placed $60 billion already in just a little over 2 days. Probably going to need to be more. But I'm going to be really focusing on how we smartly reopen the economy without giving any ground back to the disease. And I think a lot of my cohorts in the Senate are thinking along those lines as well.
So, Senator, you were one of the first officials, at least I talked with, who talked about that. Very early on, we got to think about how we reopen the economy after we really get the better of this virus. I want to talk to you about that, but first talk about what's going on right now with the small business loans. There was $350 billion appropriated. Is that going out the door? How can you monitor and make sure it's working? We're hearing some reports that there's a lot of difficulty with the SBA and with bureaucracy. And what about the increasing beyond the $350 billion? Because we did hear from the Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, who seems to be open to that. How much more do we need to appropriate?
Well, I think we'll see if we've done $60 billion in a little over 2 days. That tells you that the pace is brisk, and that means that here soon we probably will be at a point where we'll have to look at that. And I don't think any senators will really be against that, or any particular groups or individuals that have been displaced to where we maybe didn't catch them, in Phase 3. But when it comes more broadly into some of the discussions you've heard, or like fellow senator that came in with me in 18, Josh Hawley, he's hearing the same thing about how much, devastation there is across, especially the small business world, talking about a more comprehensive thing through government. I'm going to be leaning more towards be careful there on what we do in Phase 4, err on the side of the true solution to getting things back to normal is selectively reopening the economy.
When you talk about Phase 4, one of the things that's being discussed is the need to give some support to state and local government. Some people think that not enough was given in so-called Phase 3. Do you share that view? What's the situation in Indiana right now?
So when you're talking about actually giving more help to small business particularly?
No, I'm talking to the state government, to the local government. I mean, certainly we have that problem here in New York,
okay.
Where they're just, first of all, they're losing their revenues and they have really dramatically increased costs.
No, I think that was one of the last discussions we had that we knew was going to be probably, local and state government is run like a business. Basic service is needed. their revenues are off because businesses are not making incomes to pay taxes. So that'd be another area where when we ended up where we did with the figure, most of us thought that may need to be readdressed. So that'd be something I'd be okay with looking into, because it started, I think, at $25 billion, ended up in the neighborhood of $125 billion or so, and it looks like that may not have been adequate, and that I think most senators would be okay with doing something there as well.
So, Senator, let's turn to the question of reopening the economy. And as you say, we don't want to do that too soon, because we've seen situations, for example, in Singapore, where they may have moved a little too fast. But how do we come about even with a plan about how to do that? How will we know the right time to do that, and how do we do it?
Take an example here. In Indiana, Governor Holcomb was out early on, I think, listening to what we needed to do, especially with a place like Indianapolis that was different from most of the state. Looks like it's been working. They yesterday extended it for 2 more weeks, but then gave a little latitude. For smaller businesses that are non-essential, they're letting them now do curbside delivery, or a customer can come in and pick it up without reopening your store. That's the kind of common sense stuff I'm talking about. You do it selectively. You do it in the places where you've had the least number of cases, where you're most sparsely populated. You use common sense. The idea that we need to do like a national shutdown, and even the states that have not differentiated between hotspots and places where there's more social distancing by the nature of how densely populated you are, that's what I'm talking about. Having your eye on not giving any ground up to the disease. I think it doesn't have to be an all or nothing one way or the other. Of course, we don't want a wholesale reopening of the economy, because I think we'd backslide on tamping the disease down, and vice versa.
Senator, as a practical matter, do we need to have vastly greater capability of testing across the country in order to really do this reopening the economy? Because we won't know where we are. We won't know whether we're backsliding or not if we can't test an awful lot of people.
I think testing is something we're going to grapple with, and probably won't get to where we need to be during this first bout with the novel coronavirus. I think we'll be in great shape if it tries to resurface this fall. I look at the mortality rate and the cases, because the mortality rate we know is accurate. And we also know that the number of cases, if we could verify it with tests, experts have said it's anywhere from 3, 5 to 10 times as many. The thing that I think got most people freaked out early was a mortality rate that looked like it could be in the 2.5% to 3% range. Most of the experts now are saying it's going to be way under 1%, if not even closer to the flu. But I don't want to give up any ground there. I just want to be smart about how we do it. And that means that you take the risk of reopening the economy in the places where you've not had the incidence of the disease. And testing we should be doing as aggressively as we can to get data that backs up that general idea of what I think the solution is. But I don't think we'll get there with enough tests that are going to give us the full amount of information we need to where we start reopening the economy before we have everybody tested. I think that'll take us way too deeply into the year, and we'll have some irreparable demand and supply destruction as a consequence.
Senator, we're clearly fighting a national crisis, and you'd like to believe there's no partisanship, but just give me a view into that phase 4 that you referred to. You said you didn't think any senator would resist increasing the amount of money for small business. Do we think that we can get a phase 4 through without partisanship breaking out? Can you work together with the Democrats? Can Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, work together with Mitch McConnell?
I think we can if we stay focused, and that means take care of anyone who was overlooked or omitted from phase 3, enhance where we know there was a need for more when we had a limited amount of time to get the numbers right. Do not be tempted to try to add a grab bag of policy stuff into it, which, I think Speaker Pelosi did try to do that. That delayed it 3 days back from Sunday, where most senators Democrats and Republicans included, we thought we had it across the finish line. If you recall, that didn't happen until late, 3 days later on a Wednesday. I think we've learned a lesson there. Stay focused on where we didn't have it fleshed out well. Don't try to add a lot of extraneous stuff.
Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. From Jasper, Indiana, that is a Republican senator from Indiana. He is, of course, Mike Braun. Thanks for